Hi, my name is Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities via a number of different modalities. This show is obviously one of them. I also have a Facebook group, and we can be found at liveauthentically.today/FB. Here you will find a group of like-minded people committed to spiritual growth and transformation, and we would love to have you join us. I'm also super pumped that I just launched my first book, Soar, and it is found on Amazon. It's available in audiobook, paperback, and Kindle. And it is a spiritual journey through my transformative divorce process and shows how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. I'm also a spiritual life coach and work with individual clients on a daily basis to help them grow and transform. So on today's show, I'm super excited that I have with me Anthony Hester. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really appreciative.
Anthony is the host of Breathe Motivation Podcast, and he is going to tell us all about his journey today. He has dealt with stress and anxiety and panic attacks, and which is a condition that plagues many, many people on a daily basis. And he is going to tell us about his journey and how he helps people overcome that on a daily basis. What I like to do, though, before we launch into all of that, is I like to start every show off with the same question. And that question is, what does it mean to you to live authentically every day?
Yeah, I think that is something that, it took me years to find myself, even to answer that question. So that's a great question that you ask every guest on your podcast. But I think just being just being who you are, and really just finding out, sorry about that. But really just finding out who you are and living to that best thing. I grew up being a huge people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a traumatic kind of home with, my mom, she had a kind of bad childhood and kind of carried on through the generations is how it's kind of gone. But, I think for the longest time was so caught up in that idea that I've got to people please, I got to take care of other people. But I think being the best for you is, living authentically and being who you are without any kind of judgments or fearing that judgment from anyone, because I think that is what kind of gets in the way. But I think doing what you love, without any kind of apologies. I used to apologize for everything and, without ever needing to apologize for anything. So I think if you can live your life unapologetically and be you, that's the best way to live authentically. And, I don't know if that answers it as clear as I can get it, but I think that's the best you can be, is just be yourself. And that helps kind of overcome that whole process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And now that you're in this space of living authentically, you're no longer trying to people please, you've released judgments along the way. How do you feel? How do you feel on a daily basis now as compared to the way that you used to feel?
I think it's a huge, the cliche is, lifting a huge, rock off your back, and feeling much lighter, I think is how I feel. I'm able to communicate better. I'm able to set boundaries, which I think is a big key for anyone. And I think that's something that took a lot of work, and I still work on it daily. So by no means am I perfect, but letting go of that perfectionism and having to be perfect for anybody except myself. And I'd be perfect for myself, but being okay, being unperfect has helped me out.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what this spiritual journey is about. It's not about just living in the light, basking in the space of light and love 100% of the time. It's about embracing our dark, right? It's about embracing the dark side and incorporating that and integrating that and helping us understand that that's part of who we are. And our imperfections are what help us to learn and grow and propel us on our journey.
Absolutely.
So I applaud you for recognizing that and incorporating that, and for everything that you're doing to commit to growth and transformation.
Thank you.
One of the things, as I was preparing for the podcast, I just did a little meditating beforehand. One of the phrases that came to me was the old Buddhist saying, one of the old Buddhist sayings that you may have heard, and that is, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And are you familiar with that phrase?
Yes.
I
was just telling somebody.
You were?
Yeah, I was just telling somebody that the other day.
Wow, interesting. This is the universe speaking to us right
Right.
here.
Right.
This is called a synchronicity, everyone. This is like a little cosmic wink from the universe that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're on the right track. And
Right.
I would love that. This is perfect. I would love to hear you talk about this because, like I said, as I was channeling before the show, I thought this was the phrase that came to me, and I would love to hear you speak about that. So it sounds like you did your homework before the show without me even
Yeah.
asking. So
Without
good
even
job.
knowing it. Yeah. So subconsciously it just hit me. But I work in a sales environment. I have a full-time job working for sales for a telecommunications company. And, I have a friend that kind of works on a third-party side for that same company, but it's not that exact company. But I was telling him, I think sometimes within our current workspaces of what we do, we get so caught up in the idea that this is the end all be all. Like, this is your career. This is what you set out to do. And I think every day, it's easy to complain, right? I think, and I can complain sometimes, but, I was telling him that, the pain's going to be inside your body. Like your pain that you feel, is that, but, at some point you put up a tolerance for what you're going to, you're suffering in, right? You have that option to let go of that suffering and look at the positives of what you're doing. And transforming that. So if you don't like that job or anything, guess what? There's always an option to get out. But you're so, I don't want to say comfortable with that suffering, but you have a higher tolerance for suffering because you're allowing it to happen. And, he was like, wow, I never looked at it that way. And I was like, I for the same thing with me, back when, or the same thing with this position, hey, I know at the end of the day, I'm grateful for what this provides me right now, but this isn't the end game. So I can always look forward or live in the present and know, hey, what I'm doing now is helping me in this current position, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all. So I can either choose to suffer in the position or I can choose to enjoy it. And, as that next step comes forward, then we can move on and celebrate that as well. But I think there's a tolerance for suffering, and it's how much you are willing to suffer or you're wanting to suffer that allows you to either stay put or move on. And at some point it becomes unbearable. And, I noticed, that was kind of, I know we're going to talk about the stress and anxiety and panic attacks, but I know I suffered from those like 5 years ago. And it was a point of my body telling me, hey, it's time to get out. You got to move on and find something different, because this is me trying to tell you to wake up and go.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that very profound reflection on that phrase. I love that phrase. And I think that so many people don't even realize, I know at a prior point in my evolution, I didn't even realize that I had a choice, right? We're so accustomed to kind of drifting along in our unconscious modes of operation, our unconscious realities. And I say that with no judgment whatsoever, right? It's societal conditioning. We're kind of going down that checklist of this is what I think I should be doing with my life, not really realizing that we have a choice. You use the word choice and you use the word choose. And I'd like to really echo that and focus on that and really accentuate the fact that we do have a choice. And we don't even realize that, inaction is a choice. Right? Continuing to get up every day and do the same thing over and over and over again, despite ridiculously high levels of stress, anxiety, exhaustion, etc., is a choice. We may have to live in that reality for a brief period of time while we kind of figure things out, but it is really up to us to make conscious choices to shift out of those antiquated, unconscious modes of operation and launch ourselves into realities that are more authentic to who we are. So, I like to echo that, we do have a choice. We can either stay in our reality or choose to move out of the reality. And I think so many times too, and this is the perfect segue to launch into what you do and your work of, healing yourself, others, the planet, et cetera, is we don't even realize sometimes that we have choices available to us that are at our fingertips, that are accessible, that help us cope with stress and anxiety. I mean, stress is inevitable, regardless of who you are, regardless of what your role is, how evolved you are. The most evolved spiritual teachers experience stress on a daily basis, but it's how they process it that helps them move through it in a healthy way. And, stress can actually work to our benefit. It can call us to a level of action that we haven't, that we wouldn't have realized prior, and we can process it in a healthy way. But when we don't, it can build up and have a cumulative effect and show up in the form of anxiety or panic attacks. So would love to hear you talk about, when we're feeling stressed. Let's start here. What are some unhealthy coping mechanisms that people may have, some to dealing with stress? Because I think sometimes we don't even realize that we're having a knee-jerk reaction. We're resorting to some unhealthy measures to deal with stress. So what are some of those unhealthy coping mechanisms?
For me personally, I'll talk to my personal experience. I think sometimes, binge watching TV, burying yourself into something so you can, TV can kind of like numb you. So it's kind of an escape, your escape it's an escapism to get away from dealing with your everyday problems. So you'd rather not deal with them. So, hey, I can tune into this TV and really stay focused on that. And I don't have to worry about any care in my world. So I know, I've fallen into that, comfort eating, eating sweets and all of that, that's something for a long time that I was, if I was stressed out, I'd just start eating sweets or any kind of sweets, cookies, cake, whatever, that's something along those lines. I think the alternatives have never done drugs or anything like but that or alcohol, but I've come with, from my dad's an alcoholic and his family were alcoholics. So I know that that's ways to kind of deal with that as well. And I think that just kind of carries through if you don't know any better as well. So just being on the lookout for those things, the littlest, tiniest things may not seem like a problem, but they kind of take you away from kind of your journey of healing. And those are some things that I personally have seen from my standpoint.
Can you tell me a little bit about your journey? What has been your journey through dealing with stress, having it kind of have this cumulative effect of, panic attacks, anxiety, etc., and how you finally broke free and were able to move through that and process it in a healthy way?
Yeah, for sure. I was in a retail store working for the same company. And at some point, I've always been kind of perfectionist, being a perfectionist and always having to do the right thing. And again, people pleasing and, really doing way too much for other people than myself. And, one night, I was closing the store and I'd just been relocated to this location just to kind of, help this store grow. And for me, I was just trying to do everything I could. And, all of a sudden I started feeling shortness of breath and I was just sweating. And I was like, man, what's going on? Like, I don't know what's going on. So I was sitting there and all of a sudden I couldn't walk. It was the weirdest thing. And I was like, man, and, first thought was, am I dying? Like, I feel like I'm about to die. Like my heart's racing. I'm sweating. Like my head, like I'm dizzy. I'm just kind of all over the place. And, the store was about an hour away from me and I didn't know, my wife was out of town at the time. So I didn't really have anybody to call. So luckily there was an assistant manager I worked with before as well. I was like, hey, I think I'm going to have to go to the hospital. I really don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So had all of that going on. So went to the hospital. They couldn't find anything. They're like, hey, blood levels are normal. You're, did an EKG, your heart's normal. Everything's normal that we've seen, we'll give you some medicine to help with the dizziness. So that was kind of my first experience with the panic attack. I had no clue what was going on. It took me almost weeks, months to even figure out that's what it was. I reached out to, a therapist and started to go to therapy. And, as we kind of went through that process, she explained, hey, if you ever had anxiety or panic attacks. And at that point, I had really no clue. I had never even heard about this. And I was like, no, I don't know. I've never experienced anything like that. She's like, oh, I think you have a kind of an anxiety, disorder, maybe generalized anxiety. Do you have a lot of stress and things going on? I was like, well, it's just the normal jobs. And, even at that time, as I look back and reflect on it, one, I think, growing up, I had a very hard and tough relationship with my mom. And at that moment, even in that time, I had to step away from that relationship because it was toxic for me and my wife. And I had to kind of step away from that relationship. And, around that same time, that's kind of what happened. So I had all these transitions going on. I was stepping away from, a parent. I was going into a new workplace. And, that kind of added on to that, on top of that stress. But I think once I was able to kind of get that idea of the anxiety, and kind of figure out those trigger points, that was something I started to do. I'm an avid like researcher, so I've got I went and bought a bunch of books to understand anxiety. I was going to therapy at the same time. I was speaking. I was able to kind of pour out my heart. Some of the things that I was going through, kind of in a safer environment to get that off my chest, which I think also helped. But I started meditating. Just being more peaceful, and more kind of, I want to say more direct in my behaviors of what I was doing, and being more, becoming more aware of those stressors, and, at some point answering, hey, is this really the right thing that I'm doing in my life? And I think at the time I was like 20, 25, 26, I guess. I was like, okay, well, let me adjust, kind of look at my life and where I want it to be, and what can I do to move on? I think my purpose was always to help people, and find some kind of way, some kind of outlet to help people, whether it was, for free, or whether I was going to get paid for it at some point. But, my goal was to always just stay focused on, living that passion and helping people, because I always, that's what really, fired me up inside. That's what lit my heart on fire. I was always wanting to help others and find ways that I could help them. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love how you've been able to turn your experience into a positive experience for others, and you were able to transmute that pain that you were feeling into a mission that educates and empowers other people. And I think the work you're doing is so incredibly powerful, because, it's my belief that, in this society, and I don't want this to come off as political in any way, shape, or form, but, we don't take a proactive, preventative approach in society to dealing with stress and anxiety. Very much reactive, right? You're dealing with, people deal with these symptoms, they go to the hospital, the doctor, it's diagnosed kind of after the fact, it's diagnosed as anxiety, but there are things we can do. Meds are prescribed on a, regular basis to people. Here, take this. And, I think what people don't realize is that there are things that we can incorporate into our regimen, into our repertoire on a daily basis, to help head off stress, to keep stress at bay, to keep it from escalating to the panic attack stage, right? And there is a way that we can build a lifestyle around this, around stress reduction. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about what are some of those modalities? What are some, let's say someone, people who are listening to the show say, you know what, I'm super stressed out all the time. What are some things I can do on my own that are accessible to me, available, at my fingertips, that can help me lower my stress levels?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that I jumped in to was one, kind of researching and kind of understanding that, we can all pick up a book and read. And I think it comes down to that action, being able to take that action, or you're either going to have that inaction. So the action to read that book and understand what's going on, I think will help. One thing that I always loved, and I grew up playing sports, but one of the things that I did was just get out and start walking. As something so as simple as that. I turned on some music that I enjoy and I love, and I just went walking. I just felt better. Those endorphins are released by the sweating and getting active, and that was really, I would say, one of my biggest keys that helped me find that. It gave me time to kind of reflect on the day. I think reflection is a big piece to kind of understanding your stressors and knowing what they are. If I had any triggers throughout the day where I was feeling a little anxious, I would kind of make a note on my phone, and then at the end of the day I would kind of reflect on that and say, what was it? You have to really dig to the root issue, because I think there's a bigger root issue to those little tiny feelings that you're maybe having that are making you anxious. So I think a reflection is a big piece of that. So I think exercising, whether it's just walking, I don't like to run or jog. I ran track and all that. I've done enough of that, but just getting out in nature and enjoying that present moment, looking at the leaves of the trees, and, your eyes open up to a lot of things that you maybe not have noticed before. Even on the simplest walks, I recognize something new every time I went walking, because I was there in the present and in the moment. So I think that's a big key to winning through that process and processing all of that. And again, meditation was a big key.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't spend a whole lot of, I think a lot of people think that there's so much pressure to do meditation right. And I don't know that there is necessarily a right way to do it. I think if you can just kind of try to silence, those thoughts and, kind of look at them, you kind of hear them and you just kind of look at them and just kind of let them go and release those. I think that was what helped me as well. So meditation was a big key too.
Yeah, I think I would like to echo that. A time in nature is something I do on a regular basis. Lately, I've been starting each day off with an hour walk. I have a trail by my house, and
Awesome.
so right, it just dials you into the present moment. It's awe-inspiring, nature. I mean, how could we not marvel at nature and really just become absorbed in the present moment?
Right.
So I echo that, and meditation as well. And like you said, no judgment, no expectation, just silence, right? Just a moment of solitude, moments of solitude where you can just become a silent observer of your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about managing stress, like acute stress in highly
Yeah.
stressful situations. Let's say you're going to be walking into a stressful situation at work, dealing with a contentious coworker. What are some things that people can do in advance of that situation to make sure that they don't allow stress to overtake them in that moment?
It's going to sound a little weird. I don't know if it'll sound weird, but I feel like it's a little weird. Sometimes I have those conversations in my head before they happen.
Yeah.
So if I
Yeah.
know I'm walking into a situation, I'm going to be proactive. And I think that's a big key, is being proactive and knowing what that conversation may look like. But sometimes, when you get into that conversation, sometimes you let your biggest fears happen inside your head. And then when you get
Yeah.
into those conversations, a lot of times they don't end up being what you thought they were going to be. They're bigger in your head than they were in person.
Right.
So I think that kind of allows you to kind of create your own thought process behind it. So I think if you can have that conversation in your head, or kind of foresee that position of what you're doing, I think that can help a lot. Even having maybe an exit strategy as well. If it's going to get to a certain point where you're like, okay, this is how much I can handle, allowing yourself to exit the situation
Yeah.
and getting out of that. So, if it gets escalated and, just saying, hey, let's go ahead and, sideline, put this on the parking lot is what people like to say, but let's put this parking lot in and let's maybe come back to this when we have cooler heads. So we can kind of really attack that, again, root problem or root issue.
Brilliant. And is there anything that people can do in the way of boundaries, kind of asserting boundaries at the beginning of stressful conversations, challenging situations, to make sure that people operate within a respectful, calm environment?
Yeah, I think setting those kind of boundaries up front and speaking to those, and letting others know, hey, this is where, I know that we're having an issue.
Yeah.
I want this to be resolved. I want to first set the boundary that, hey, I don't want us yelling at each other. It's not going to help the situation. And being able to have that upfront conversation, I think helps in many ways. For me, I think there's other ways too. While you can almost kind of, I don't know, I always used to tell this in sales, because in sales, I used to deal with a lot of escalated customers that, would just blow up in a second.
Okay.
And I would always tell people there's a technique. You almost want to mirror their energy. So you want to mirror where they're at. So you kind of want to reach at their level. And then, maybe you're not going to, yell at the customer, but you're going to kind of get that intensity. And then you're going to slowly bring that intensity down yourself. And it's like a calming effect that you'll see across that person, because your energy can transfer to those people. So, people aren't going to get crazy with you if you're starting to kind of bring the levels down. So I think that's something along the way that you can bring in as a tool too, is like a mirroring technique, kind of match that person's energy and then bring them down calmly as you do it as well.
Kind of handhold them down back to that place of peace and tranquility.
Right.
Yeah. I love your idea too of rehearsing or having that discussion in your head beforehand. And really, I think it's so important for us to remember that, we own our emotions, right? And just like everything else in our life is a choice, our emotions are a choice. And I know that sounded really outlandish to me when I first started to kind of explore this, the emotions and the effect that they have on our reality. But emotions are a choice. And I know I've coached myself many times saying, you know what, I don't want to allow myself to meet someone else in their anger or in their, low vibrational kind of negative emotion. I'm going to stay where I am. I'm going to choose peace. I am going to choose respect, and I'm going to model that behavior and stay in that space. And then they have the option to meet me where I am. So
Right.
realizing that I don't need to take on the emotions, and that's incredibly freeing. I don't know if you've had that experience before, but just it's incredibly freeing to realize that, we have a choice to harbor or to manage the emotions the way that feels best to us.
Right. Right. Yeah. I personally, growing up with my mom, and we'd get into arguments and things like that, but it's, at some point, getting into even this age, in my early 30s, that's kind of where I was able to kind of stand up and be empowered to, not allow, there was a saying, I did door-to-door sales for 100% commission. And there was a saying, he who controls your emotions controls you. So I had to kind of look at that and say, why would I allow people to run my mind or run my feelings? In any situation, I think, you can get so caught up in being, being right. I think a lot of people are wanting to always be right or have their thing heard. And I think that's where the emotions come and really intensify, is always having that need to be right, or,
Right.
having that last word. And sometimes not even having that last word is going to be more freeing and more peaceful than blurting out, anything else further. So that's something I learned over the last couple of years, that, I don't always have to have the right answers. And I can always just, walk away from any situation that I want to, I'm free to do that. Just like anybody else is free. We're all free to choose to walk away from any situations that don't feel right.
Right.
And not have any kind of obligation or guilt for doing it.
Right. Absolutely. And you use the word allow or allowing, right? I mean, we're allowing other people. If we allow other people to control our emotions, we're allowing them to control us. And,
Right.
I was having this discussion with someone actually just yesterday, and he's like, oh, he made me so upset or whatever. And, and I said, the truth is, you might not like to hear this, but you're allowing this to happen. You're allowing it. And that was an aha moment for this person, because they didn't even realize that. I said, you had a choice. You could have thrown down a boundary and you could have walked away, but you allowed this person to continue and allowed this person to persist. And again, this is all part of the journey, right? It's all of our life experiences that help us learn about ourselves, help us learn about how to deal with other people, how to stay in control of our emotions. And there's growth, right? There's growth in these experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's hear about what you do. I know that you have amazing life experiences, and you've turned them into a gift to the world. You help to empower other people and to help other people live healthy lifestyles, manage stress on a daily basis. So let's hear about how you have formally decided to change the world.
Yeah, for sure. So I have Breathe Motivation podcast, and actually today is like the 3rd year anniversary of Breathe Motivation.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So we've been at it a while. It started out as a daily thing. Sunday through Saturday, I did an episode daily. I think I got to 150 episodes before I kind of had to dial it back. But I did it daily to hold myself accountable, because I would start things and not finish. And I was like, hey, I want to do this because, my goal when I set out to do this was, one, it started out as like a blog. And I started to write little posts. And this idea of Breathe Motivation came, probably even a year before I even started the podcast or even the blog, because I was so afraid to put myself out there. But at one moment, I bought a microphone, and I was like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. And it literally sat on my desk for like 3 weeks. And I was like, well, when am I going to do it? I was so afraid of, one, I think most people don't like to even hear their voice. So I'm like, man, who's going to listen to me? So there was kind of like a back and forth on like, I forgot what they kind of call it. I don't have a blank, but kind of like the fraud. Like, it felt like a fraud, because it's like, who's going to want to listen to me that, I don't, I'm just some guy. But I think through my personal experiences, that's what I tried to share, was my personal experiences. And I think people can relate to personal experiences. And when it is personal, it's able to kind of maybe sink in a little bit more for other people and say, hey, I'm going through this too. He went through this, that, kind of being an example of, here's some of my faults, or here's some of the things that I've gone through, and here's what I did to correct them. It's still a work in progress. I'm always a work in progress. And I think that's the thing that I wanted to set out with, was if I could just change one person's life through this podcast, I've done my job. I would have never expected it to go where it has. And, to this day, that I'm just appreciative of being able to have the platform to share my experiences and to have people relate to it. Because I think that's a big key, is that relation, and knowing that, somebody else has gone through that, and, I've got that support. And I think that was what I really kind of set out to do.
Right. And the universe, I so firmly believe the universe always conspires with us. It always holds our hands and walks with us. And that's the reason, when we're doing something to add value to the world, right? You're doing something to change lives, add value to the world, raise collective consciousness, play an active part in the healing of the planet. And that is super powerful work. So that's when we start to experience an ease and a flow and an organicness and a naturalness to the work that we're doing, right? Anytime you're adding value to other people's lives, it just can't happen any other way. It just has to unfold as beautifully and as organically as it has for you. So I applaud you on all of your efforts. Thank you. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished, everything that you will accomplish. I'll look forward to keeping in touch and seeing the amazing work that you're putting into this world. So if people would like to get in touch with you directly, find out about your podcast, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm on every platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think Google Podcasts as well. So you can reach me on there. It's just Breathe Motivation. I've got Instagram and Twitter at Breathe Motivate, and then my Facebook page at Breathe Motivation. And people can reach out to me on my email at anthony@breathemotivation.com. So I'm open to any kind of, you guys just want to chat. Like, I love chatting with people back and forth on social media, and, answering questions or whatnot. So I'm definitely open to any of that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for being here to share all of your wonderful wisdom and experience with me and our viewers and listeners. I would also like to thank our viewers and listeners for being here. In the spirit of choices, time is a choice. And I am grateful that you have carved time out of your day to be here to listen to Anthony's knowledge and wisdom and powerful messaging that he has for us. I would also like to remind you that we would love to have you in our Facebook group. We can be found at liveauthentically.today/FB, and also go to Amazon and check out a copy of my book, Soar. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.